The moment the crystal trophy hit the floor, the whole room went dead silent. It shattered on the marble like a gunshot. And for a second, no one moved. Just the sound of broken glass skittering across the floor and the DJ's playlist screeching to a stop mid-beat. My dress was ripped at the shoulder, my face flushed with heat, and my hands were still clenched at my sides, like I was ready to swing again. Everyone stared. I didn't care. My name is Lila Byrne. I'm 33. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. And that night at the Victory Circuit Gala, I finally broke. "Are you insane?" my father shouted across the ballroom, his voice slicing through the silence like a blade. "What the hell is wrong with you, Lila?" He stood next to the podium where he'd just accepted his Lifetime Motorsport Achievement Award, clutching the mic like it might steady him. His silver hair gleamed under the lights, and his tailored tux was untouched, still spotless and in control, like always, not me. "Wrong with me?" I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You expect me to smile while you try to steal what's mine and hand it to him?" I pointed across the room. Lucas, my younger brother, sat casually at our parents' table, a glass of champagne in his hand, and that same smug look he always wore when he thought he was winning. My mother clutched his arm like he was fragile, like I was the dangerous one. "Oh, come on," Lucas said, loud and lazy, like this was just a minor inconvenience. "Don't act like this is some betrayal. You always knew it would come back to me eventually. You just got a little head start because you were the favorite." My jaw locked. "The favorite?" I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping before I could stop it. "You think I was the favorite?" "Please," he said with a sneer. "You were Granddad's little shadow, tucked in the pit garages, pretending to be one of the guys. He gave you his racing shares out of pity." The room let out a collective gasp. Pity. I blinked, and for a moment, I wasn't in the ballroom anymore. I was in that hospital room 5 years ago, holding my grandfather's hand while the machines beeped in slow, uneven rhythm. "I'm leaving you the stake," he had whispered, his voice dry and cracked. "Because you know the grind. You bled for this sport, Lila. You earned it. Not Lucas. Me." I blinked back to the present, my eyes locking on Lucas. He didn't give me anything out of pity. He gave it to me because I worked for it. While you were blowing through trust funds and crashing out of junior circuits, I was rebuilding engines in the dirt. "You're being dramatic," my father snapped. "This isn't about the past. It's about the future of the Byrne name." "You mean Lucas's team," I said. "You want me to sign over the equity, my equity, to bankroll his next vanity project. That's what this is about." "It's about helping the family," my mother said suddenly, her voice softer but no less sharp. "Lucas deserves a chance. Don't be cruel." My gaze landed on her. She looked tired, sad, like this was all just a bit too much emotion for her to process. She was always like that. Emotional when convenient, silent when it mattered. "I'm not being cruel," I said. "I'm being clear. The answer is no." My father slammed his hand on the table. "You'd really let this family fall apart over money?" "This isn't about money," I said, stepping forward. "It's about respect. And I'm done pretending we're equals when you never treated me like one." I turned and walked away, heels crunching on broken crystal, ignoring the whispers and stares trailing behind me. My dress was torn, my pride was intact, and the war had just begun. Back then, the nights always smelled like oil and brake dust. Most people my age were out drinking or partying. I was underneath a race car, fingers frozen stiff, trying to replace a faulty clutch before the sunrise qualifying round. No one ever saw that part. They just saw the name, Byrne, and assumed I was handed everything. They didn't see me hauling tires through rain-slick paddocks at 16, or how I worked pit crew for third-tier teams, while Lucas posted selfies with bottle girls in Monaco. They didn't see the textbooks I kept in my duffel bag, the hours I spent in motel lobbies cramming for engineering exams between practice sessions. I'd come off a 12-hour track day with grease in my hair and finish a thermodynamics paper before bed. Lucas never had to grind like that. He had sponsors, press coverage, invitations to luxury boxes. I had burns on my forearms and stress-induced ulcers. Still, I never complained. I thought eventually the work would speak for itself. It did. Just not to my parents. To them, Lucas was always the face of the family, the future of the Byrne legacy. And me, I was the one good with tools. The practical one. They said it like it was a compliment, like it was the polite way to say, not quite enough. But my grandfather saw it. He never said much. He wasn't the type. But when he did, it stuck. The first time he let me shadow him during an engine rebuild, I thought I was just being humored. But then he started quizzing me, challenging me, making me prove I belonged. And when I did, he smiled, just a little. "You don't fake this kind of grit," he said once. "It's either in you or it isn't." It was there in every quiet nod. Every time he left the best jobs to me, not Lucas. And 5 years ago, when cancer took him down hard and fast, I stayed with him through every treatment, every chemo session, every scan. The day we lost him, the will was read in his office at Burn HQ. I remember the smell, leather, dust, and the faintest hint of motor oil from the jacket he'd left hanging by the window. Everyone expected an even split. Lucas sat there with his arms folded like he was just waiting for the paperwork. My mother dabbed her eyes, even though she'd barely visited Granddad in the final weeks. Then the lawyer said it. Majority control of Byrne Racing Enterprises, 61% of voting shares, goes to Lila Jane Byrne. The room froze. "What?" my father barked. "That has to be a mistake." But it wasn't. I was stunned too. Not because I thought I didn't deserve it, but because I hadn't expected him to put it in writing, to stake the future of the family business on me, on the one who'd stayed up bleeding and rebuilding and studying when no one else bothered. Back in the present, I stood by the massive window in the ballroom, staring out at the city lights. The echo of Lucas's voice still rattled in my head. "You were the favorite." I heard my mother approach before she spoke. "Lila, please," she said gently. "This isn't about control or money. It's about family. Help your brother. Just transfer the shares. You have more than enough." I turned to face her. "They're worth $50 million, Mom. That's not more than enough. That's everything," she blinked, caught off guard. "And I'm not giving him a dime," I said. "Not for another failed team. Not for another press disaster. Not again." Her face twisted in quiet disbelief, like she couldn't believe I meant it, but I did. This time, I did. The champagne had barely settled in flutes before I stood again. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just set my glass down, smoothed the torn fabric at my waist, and stepped onto the small platform next to the main table, where my parents sat flanking Lucas like he was royalty. They looked up, annoyed, confused. "I'd like to say something," I said, calm and cold. "Lila," my father warned. "No," I said. "You've had your say. Now it's my turn." I turned to the crowd, investors, sponsors, drivers, old family friends, all of them watching like they were waiting for the next scandal to unfold. I gave them one. "Since we're all here celebrating legacy and vision," I said, "let's talk about the truth behind what's been happening at Byrne Racing the last 5 years. Starting with Lucas." Lucas scoffed, still lounging with that smug grin. "Here we go. Let's start with the electric cart startup," I said. "You know, the one he launched with company resources and crashed in under 9 months? That was a $6.8 million loss." Murmurs rippled through the room. My mother's face went pale. "Lila, stop." I didn't. Then there was the DUI incident in Austin, the one the press never heard about because the company paid off the settlement, $1.3 million in legal fees and damage control. My father pushed back his chair. "We handled that privately." "No," I cut him off. "I handled it. Because your precious golden boy couldn't keep his foot off the gas or the bottle." Lucas's smile cracked, just a little. "Oh, and who could forget the investor hush payment? Remember that, Lucas? The private equity guy you got drunk with in Palm Springs, who said you promised him backdoor equity access." I pulled out my phone. $2.5 million signed off by Dad, disguised as consulting. The room went dead silent. "You're exaggerating," Lucas said through clenched teeth. "That wasn't—" "Want me to pull up the email?" I offered. "It's archived. Board timestamp. Want me to show them?" He shut up. I turned back to my parents. "I've kept quiet for years, cleaned up the messes, watched you cut corners, sign checks, cover for him while blaming everyone else." My father looked like he wanted to yell, but he didn't. Because he knew. I had the receipts. And then I dropped the real bomb. "I've called an emergency board meeting," I said. "Byrne Racing Enterprises, effective immediately." My mother gasped. You can't just, I can, I said. And I have. I held up my phone again, tapping the screen once. The email was already sent, time-stamped, addressed to every board member. The subject line, Emergency Restructuring Meeting, Motion for Leadership Review. I stepped off the platform, heels silent on the polished wood, my dress still torn at the shoulder. Behind me, voices exploded. My father was demanding answers. My mother was crying. Lucas was cursing under his breath like the coward he's always been when real pressure shows up. But I didn't stop. As I crossed the marble foyer of the gala hall, I pulled out my phone and sent one final text. To Clara, assistant. It's done. Everything is in motion. Her reply came instantly. Copy. Press release locked. 9 a.m. sharp. Confirming your 51% holding. Let's clean house. I exhaled, but my hands still shook as I slid the phone into my clutch. 51%. It took me almost a year, quietly buying out the silent partners, picking off board votes one by one, all while Lucas was too busy crashing prototypes and hosting tequila-fueled investor brunches. Let him enjoy tonight, because tomorrow everything burns. The morning headlines hit like a meteor. I sat in my corner office at Burn HQ, high above the Charlotte skyline, watching a half-dozen monitors flicker with coverage from every major sports outlet. Burn Racing restructures under new leadership. Lila Burn seizes control, cuts all family ties in company overhaul. Burn family fallout. Billion-dollar blood feud. My coffee had gone cold. I didn't care. Clara, my assistant, stepped in silently and handed me the updated press packet. Her nails were immaculate, her tone neutral, but the twitch at the corner of her mouth betrayed her excitement. You want the rundown, she asked? Just the highlights. She tapped her tablet. Press release landed at exactly 9. Stocks already climbing. The public response is surprisingly sympathetic. People are sick of watching rich screw-ups get second chances. I almost smiled. And the rest? Clara's lips thinned. Your parents started calling at 7. Your mom's left 4 voicemails. Your father's called 12 times. Lucas called once, then just started texting in all caps. Of course he did. I nodded, pinched the bridge of my nose, then leaned back in the chair that used to belong to my grandfather. I imagined him sitting where I was now, stoic, steady, maybe sipping the same bitter roast I always hated as a kid. You know they're going to show up, Clara said softly. They already have. She tilted her head. Security just buzzed, I said. They're in the lobby. Clara didn't blink. Instructions? I paused. Last night had been one long adrenaline spike. I hadn't slept. My hands were still stiff from clenching them all the way home from the gala. I had half expected to wake up and find it had all been a dream, but it wasn't. This was real. I looked at Clara, my voice low and certain. Let them up, but I want everything recorded, audio and video, she nodded. Starting now. She pressed a discreet button on her tablet. A green light blinked on the console beside my desk. Security will escort them up, she said. I looked out the window again as the city buzzed beneath me. It was strange this moment. Calm, like the eye of a storm. The worst part wasn't coming anymore. It was already here. The next knock wouldn't be a board member or an investor. It would be my family. And this time, I wouldn't be their daughter. I'd be their boss. I sat up straight, squared my shoulders, and slid the press release packet across the desk until it was perfectly centered. Then I said it clearly. Let's begin. The elevator dinged. I didn't stand. I just sat behind the desk, calm, ready, hands folded on the cool walnut surface, while the green recording light glowed steady in the corner of the office. Then the door burst open. My father came in first, red-faced and puffing like a man storming a racetrack with no brakes. My mother followed, looking pale and frantic, clutching her designer handbag like it might shield her from the truth. They didn't sit. What the hell did you do, Lila? My father snapped. Close the drains, I replied. The board approved everything. You blindsided us, my mother cried. You froze the family accounts, the payments to Lucas's team, his training facility, his staff. Everything's been shut off. That's correct, I said. All personal loans from Burn Racing to former drivers, their relatives, or any non-business ventures were terminated effective this morning. You had no right, she shrieked. I had 51% of the vote, I said. sliding a folder across the desk. And I had every right. My father grabbed it and flipped it open, squinting at the spreadsheets like they were written in another language. What is this? Receipts, I said. Breakdown of 5 years' worth of internal losses. Lucas is responsible for $23.7 million in unrecouped expenditures. He stopped flipping. No, that's not, my mother started, but I cut her off. Let's walk through it, shall we? I tapped the first page. The cart startup that never delivered a prototype, 8.2, a private jet lease billed to the company under marketing, 4 million. Oh, and the hush fund, 2.5 as we discussed. She sat down slowly, shaking her head. Lucas is trying, she whispered. He's been under pressure. It's hard, what he does. I felt something inside me fracture, not from anger this time, but from a quiet, familiar ache. I leaned forward. You know what was hard, I said. Graduating top of my engineering class. And you skipped the ceremony because Lucas was in a rehab facility in Switzerland, launching the telemetry software upgrade that landed our first international sponsor. And you didn't even call because Lucas had totaled another car. My father opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. Do you remember Granddad's funeral? I asked. They both looked at me like they didn't want the answer. I was the one who gave the eulogy. You both sat in the front row and left before I could finish, because Lucas had a meltdown in the parking lot and needed attention. That's what he always gets. All of it. My mother's voice cracked. He's your brother. I sat back, cold now. And I'm your daughter, but you made your choice. Over and over. You picked him. My father stepped forward, his voice softening into that manipulative tone he always used when charm failed. Princess, come on. You know we're a team. You, me, your mother. We built this. Don't throw it away over a disagreement. I gave him the flattest look I could manage. You built your image, I said. I built the company, he flinched. I stood slowly and walked around the desk. My mother looked up at me like I was someone she didn't recognize. Maybe I wasn't. Not anymore. I'm not your backup plan, I said, and I'm not your bank. Burn Racing is done financing failure. My father clenched his jaw. So that's it? You're cutting us off? No, I said. And for the first time, I almost smiled. The company is. Then I turned to Clara through the open door. Security will see them out. Neither of them moved right away. They didn't cry. They didn't yell. But when they left, they didn't look back either. Good. Because neither was I. The screaming started before the door even shut behind him. You destroyed me, Lucas bellowed as he stormed into my office like a man on fire. His suit jacket was wrinkled, his hair a mess, his eyes bloodshot and wild. Clara had barely stepped out before he lunged. You killed my deal, you cold backstabbing. Security moved fast. Both guards, already posted by the elevators, grabbed him by the arms before he could get within 5 feet of my desk. Let go of me, he shouted, twisting hard. She's my sister. She can't do this to me. But I already had. I stayed seated, calm, as Lucas thrashed between the guards like a tantruming child. His tie had come loose, and one of his cufflinks was missing. If he was trying to look like a victim, it wasn't working. You sabotaged everything, he hissed, chest heaving. You leaked the restructuring before I could finalize my funding. I lost my entire investor group overnight. You didn't lose them, I said. They read the news. They did the math. You think you're so clever, he spat. All this boardroom power play crap? It's pathetic. You think this makes you Granddad? No, I said quietly. It makes me the adult in the room. His face twisted. I was this close to launching, he growled. New brand, new team, real talent. And now they won't touch me because of you. They won't touch you because they finally saw what I've been cleaning up behind the scenes for years. I didn't ask you to. No, I said, standing now, my voice even. But you never had to, did you? You just expected it. Lucas pulled against the guards again. I built this name too. I was the face. You think people gave a damn about you turning wrenches in pit row? They came for me. Exactly, I said. They came for the face. I stayed to build the engine. He froze. That cut through. I turned to Clara, who had returned silently with the security team. Escort Mr. Byrne out of the building. His access is revoked effective immediately. Wait, he looked to her, then back to me. You can't just throw me out. You're not on payroll. You're not a shareholder. You're not even a contractor anymore, I said. You're a liability. and a formal board discussion is already in motion to recover misused company funds. Legal will be in touch. He stared at me like I'd slapped him. You'd sue your own brother? He whispered. I'm protecting the company, I said. Which you've been draining like a parasite for years. Clara stepped forward. Time to go. Lucas didn't move. The guards had to push him toward the elevator. As the doors slid shut, he locked eyes with me, face pale, voice shaking. You'll regret this, he muttered. You'll be all alone. I didn't answer. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and reached for my coffee. It was lukewarm now, but I took a sip anyway. Clara stood quietly nearby. Everything's secure, she said. Legal is prepped, board is aligned, and the official lockout notice has been issued. I nodded. She hesitated, then added softly, Your grandfather would be proud. I stared at the wall for a long moment, then whispered, Yeah, I hope so. 3 months later, I was sipping coffee on a quiet Thursday morning when Clara dropped a magazine on my desk with a thud. Page 6, she said, tight-lipped. I flipped it open. There it was, splashed across the glossy fold-out. Lucas Byrne, the exiled racer strikes back. In smaller font beneath, I was forced out by greed, not merit, claims Lucas Byrne, launching rival brand amid family feud. I didn't even finish the article. I didn't need to. They actually published this crap? I asked. Not just published it, Clara said, swiping through her tablet. It's trending, hashtags, influencer podcasts. Some startup blogs are eating it up. He's pitching himself as the real heir to Byrne Racing, victim of internal corruption. I let out a sharp laugh. What's he selling? Pity or NFTs? Both, apparently. She turned the screen. He's calling it Altura GP. Already has a pitch deck floating around, promising breakthrough innovation, fueled by insider industry knowledge, which, by the way, is a veiled threat. I scanned the leaked slides. Some of them were word-for-word lifts from our private proposals, timelines, prototype specs, even phrases from our pitch to Mercury Energy last quarter. He wasn't just bluffing, he was stealing. Clara leaned on the edge of the desk. He's using stolen files to bait investors. He's implying he has more. He's banking on you staying quiet. I didn't respond right away. I just pressed the intercom button on my desk. Get legal on the line, I said. It's time for phase 2. As the call connected, Clara spoke again, quieter this time. You think he knows what's coming? I shook my head. Lucas doesn't think beyond the next spotlight. He doesn't prepare for consequences. He assumes other people will clean up the mess. Well, Clara said, walking to the window. He's in for a surprise. She was right. What Lucas didn't know, what he never cared to understand, was that I'd been documenting everything. Every wire transfer, every expense with a falsified memo, every NDA he'd breached, every email he'd forwarded to his personal account, and every proprietary file accessed without authorization. I wasn't just ready to fight. I'd already won. I stared at the photo of him in the article, posing like he was about to conquer the world, and smiled. He thought he was launching a brand, but really he was walking straight into a lawsuit. The press conference was held at a rented hotel ballroom just off the Vegas Strip. Lucas stood behind a podium with a faux carbon fiber finish, flanked by 2 oversized banners that read Altura GP in some futuristic font. His hair was slicked back, and he wore a navy suit just a shade too shiny for a man claiming to rebuild motorsport from the ground up. Cameras flashed. Microphones leaned forward. And right before he opened his mouth, a man in a gray suit stepped up beside him and tapped his arm. The man handed him an envelope. Mr. Byrne, he said loud enough for the mics to catch. You've been served. Lucas froze. Flashes exploded like fireworks as he stared down at the legal packet in his hands. The cameras zoomed in, reporters whispering, eyes darting toward the Byrne Racing logo on the corner of the documents. By the time he looked back up, the damage was already done. The lawsuit went public within the hour. Byrne Racing Enterprises versus Lucas Byrne. Charges including breach of contract, corporate espionage, and misappropriation of proprietary technology. The media flipped on him like vultures spotting roadkill. By the end of the day, old stories started resurfacing. Past lawsuits, unpaid debts, gag orders from former collaborators, even a leaked letter from a past investor accusing him of forging financial projections. By morning, Altura GP's website had vanished. And by noon, half of his launch team had quietly distanced themselves online. At 4:17 p.m., I heard the knock on my office door. Clara glanced up from her desk outside, but I didn't need her to announce him. I already knew. My father stepped in without a word. His once pristine jacket looked wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot like he hadn't slept. He didn't sit. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, staring at the floor like it held answers. "You did it," he said finally. "You really went through with it." "I warned him," I said. "I warned both of you." He nodded slowly. "The press. They're crucifying him." "No," I said. "He did that to himself. I just lit the match." He walked closer, hands now gripping the back of one of the guest chairs. "You could stop this. Call off the lawsuit. Make a statement." "I won't." His mouth tightened. "He's your brother." I looked him dead in the eye. "You stopped being family when you threw a trophy at me," I said. "Now I'm just the CEO protecting the brand." The silence between us was heavier than anything we'd ever shared. He looked older now, hollowed out. Maybe it was regret. Maybe just ego bruised beyond repair. But I didn't soften, because I remembered the years they let Lucas burn through opportunity after opportunity while I worked in the shadows. I remembered the humiliation, the way they clapped louder for his podium finishes than for my college degree, the way he'd smiled when I bled. My father left without another word. As the door clicked shut behind him, Clara stepped inside, holding her tablet. Investor hotlines cleared up. "Legal wants your final approval on the countersuit language." I nodded. "Send it." "And Lucas?" "Let him watch," I said. "Let him feel what consequences taste like." She gave a quiet nod, then stepped back out. I sat alone for a moment, letting the silence settle. No noise, no yelling. Just the quiet hum of stability returning, and the feeling of bridges, finally and fully, burned. It was early, just past 7, when the courier dropped the envelope at my office. No name on the outside, just an embossed seal I hadn't seen in years. My grandfather's initials in gold foil. Clara handed it to me without a word, then stepped out. I stared at it for a long time before I opened it. The paper was thick, the kind that used to come out of the printer in his old office. The one with the faded racing pennants and the photos of him in his early indie days. Helmet under arm, always half smiling like he knew something the rest of us didn't. Inside was a letter. No date, no salutation. Just his words, scrawled in that rigid, slanted handwriting I used to watch him correct engineers' specs with. "True leadership is doing what's right, not what's easy. I left you the company because you earned it. Not for what you did when people were watching, but for how you kept going when no one was. Make it yours. Make it better." M. My throat tightened. I pressed the letter against my chest for a second, just breathing. Then I stood. The floor below, once filled with hangers-on, entitled cousins and retired racers collecting favors, was buzzing now. I walked through the open hallway past rows of fresh faces, engineers from MIT, pit specialists from smaller circuits hungry for a shot, marketing hires with notebooks already full of ideas. No one looked like they were coasting. I stopped at the garage bay. The overhead lights glared off polished metal and carbon fiber. The latest prototype, lightweight, sustainable, and completely in-house engineered, sat in the center of the bay, surrounded by a team half my age. One of the interns glanced up, startled. "Oh, Ms. Byrne. We didn't expect you down here." I smiled. "Just checking in. Don't mind me." He nodded, then returned to work, his hands stained with grease and focus. I watched for a moment longer, then headed back up to the executive floor. Clara was waiting at my desk with the latest quarterly report. "Ready for good news," she said, lifting a brow. "Always." She handed it over. Profits were up 40%. Investor satisfaction was at a 7-year high. R&D was fully funded through next year with a reserve buffer. Sponsorships had doubled. The dead weight was gone. "Send it to the board," I said. "Full transparency." "Of course." She paused, then added, "Want to send a copy to your parents?" I looked down at the folder again. "Yes," I said. "One for each." Clara turned to leave, but I stopped her. "Also, attach a note. Just one line." She waited. I recited it slowly. "We're not living off the name anymore. We're building something that lasts. She smiled. Got it. After she left, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside, wrapped in a soft cloth, was the old photo I'd had restored last year. My grandfather in his original burn racing suit, squinting at the camera in front of the first car he ever built. Grease on his chin, wind in his hair, defiance in his eyes. I set the photo upright beside my monitor. Then I sat back, took a deep breath, and whispered, "We did it." And I built something of my own. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it.